Hello, it's Chris and Rick Talk Guitars. That's Chris over there.
Hello.
I'm Rick. We are going to talk about the guitars from the Ken Burns documentary Country. And we realize it's not as timely as we wanted it to be because we both watched it and got through with it a little while back. And we wanted to do an episode in more close proximity to the time that we stopped watching it, but just logistically it didn't work. But it's something we wanted to talk about because it was so cool to see all these really cool guitars and the way guitars featured prominently in this documentary. Right, Chris?
That's absolutely right. It was a feast for the eyes and ears.
Yeah.
And
totally.
Anyone that's a fan of American guitar history.
Oh, yeah.
It was there.
It was there. It was Martin, old Martins, old Gibsons, some Fenders thrown in for good measure, acoustics as well. Where do you want to start?
Let's start with probably, because we just talked about it a little bit, like the star of the guitars of Ken Burns' country documentary. It's got to be Maybelle Carter's L5. That's one of them.
Bingo.
That was one that was just great to see so much of and to hear so much from. Because for me, whenever I think of the Carter family, she revolutionized the guitar in so many ways.
She did.
And I always, when I think of a Maybelle Carter lick or if I'm robbing one, I always hear that tubby L5 sound. That kind of like just unmistakable. Anytime I pick up an old, 20s, 30s, 40s, like old Epiphone or any old, archtop guitar, it has that bit of tub in it. And it harkens back to the guitar of Maybelle Carter.
I love it.
So let's start with that guitar.
And I'm the same way. And you and I both agreed as we were talking about this show and just seeing the Carter family and seeing her. Like, I'm the same way when I hear the Carter family or hear those kind of guitars. I just think about the picture in my mind of those posed pictures of the Carter family, and there's Maybelle with that freaking cool L5 in her lap and those finger picks and stuff. And it made a huge impression on me. And it's just such a cool looking guitar too. It's a beautiful guitar. It's hand carved top and back maple, and it's just such a beautiful instrument. And you and I were just talking too about the thing I loved about it is when the Carter family started to make a little dough, AP bought a motorcycle and Sarah bought a fur, and then Maybelle upgraded her guitar.
She got an axe, yeah.
She got a better axe.
Yeah, and we were wondering, was that when she got the L5? I didn't have a chance to Google.
I can't remember. Maybe somebody can chime in out there.
I don't know what she was playing before that, but that it stands to reason that was like the first big money she had coming in. I'm getting that.
Exactly.
So maybe that's the one she got.
And I just love that mentality, right? That's right up our alley, right? If we got an extra, back then it's like, oh shit, let's go to the guitar store, man. Let's get a better guitar.
But you don't have a house.
Exactly.
That's okay.
You're still living in dirt floors. Well, hey, I need a better guitar.
Yeah, I need a new guitar.
Yeah, so I think for me that guitar is, and again, I think it's iconic just because the Carter family is like ground zero for country music, and so that
just about not only country music, we're just about modern guitar playing from that point forward, which I wanted to talk about too.
Sweet.
We can go on and on about that guitar, which is great, but the interesting thing about Maybelle Carter is, like many people, myself included, who had never even heard of her, until later in my life, I didn't really know anything about her.
Yep.
But once I started getting into the Carter family, I'm like, holy shit! So much of what I do came from her.
Oh yeah.
And that's for all of us.
What we all do.
It's that playing a chord and kind of adding some little bass melody and stuff to that, and between chords and whatnot. It's like you can thank her for that. I mean, she pretty much started that shit, which was super cool to see and hear and to know that people do realize that.
Oh yeah, well, and all the big guitar guys that came along afterwards totally tip the hat to Maybelle Carter. Chet Atkins, from Chet to who's the young cat? The I'm blocking on it. Vince Gill.
John Mayer.
No, Vince Gill. All these really great guitar players all just tip the hat to Maybelle Carter, and rightfully so, because her style was so idiosyncratic but cool and melodic and
groundbreaking. Every bit as much as like Merle Travis or Chet Atkins or anybody. I mean, it was she just brought something that didn't exist before, and she threw it out there for everybody else.
Yeah,
so
and people dug it.
Maybelle.
Totally, and people dug it, and they respected it, and they gave her props, which I totally dug. Yeah.
I mean, we could talk about the Carter family for like
I know,
this
right?
entire episode. So maybe we'll. What else about the Carter? It was a big segment. I mean, it was a huge segment,
and rightfully so, because like you said, that's ground zero for so much, you know.
Right.
But from a guitar perspective, that's what struck with you and I was Maybell's L5 and just her style of playing that was so cool and like you said, spawned a bunch of different styles that she is really responsible for that inspiration, you know?
Right.
But guitar-wise, the thing I just dug, as any guitar geek would, is just seeing all those pre-war Martins and Gibsons and, you know, that were being played by all these artists, man. And it was just so cool to see. Weird things about it, though, that stuck out to me were like the pickguard stuff, right? Like, you know, you could tell that they were trying to protect the top of the guitar, but they had so much pickguard plastered on the top of the guitar that it's like, okay, well, how much, you know,
the concept of like let the top vibrate wasn't really a thing. I mean, if you think of Elvis Presley's D18,
right?
Yeah, let's just take this beautiful D18 and wrap it in leather so the top can't move, but it'll be protected.
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
All those country cats were, you know, were responsible for getting a lot of bling in a lot of the American guitar companies, because they're like, you know, you make this really nice top of the line Martin, but I want more.
Right.
Which like Gene Autry, like the first D4 or D45. It's like, and I want my name in blocks on it.
Exactly.
I want it to show up on TV and all
and
this
that became a thing. Yeah, everybody had to have their name emblazoned on their fretboards.
And that was cool to see. One of the things that I thought was super cool is, you know, if you're watching it, and the story is really fascinating, but if you kind of have in the back of your mind the American guitar manufacturing industry, you know, when it gets to different sections, you can see who popped up. Like, you know, when they get to Bob Wills and the Texas Playboys, there's Fender's been here, you know, and you start to see Fender amps and guitars show up. And because he was Leo Fender was super into Western swing.
Yeah.
And to see all that rare footage and like, sure enough, prominently featured Telecasters and guitar amps, deluxes and whatnot. He was definitely weaseling that stuff in. Like recently, I think we both read that book that talked about guitar manufacturers. I don't remember what it was called.
I don't either.
It paralleled this for me a lot. I mean, like Bigsby and, you know, all that shit. You can just see these like crazy inventors stuff start popping up in all these video segments. And that was really cool. So I think that documentary is every bit as much about, you know, the history of guitar manufacturing and, you know, invention as well. Because,
totally.
I mean, it's represented throughout. But what if we talked about the Carter family? What was another super iconic guitar from that you found yourself like kind of focusing in on, like a specific instrument? Can you think of any?
Well, I can't think of a specific instrument, but I would have to just say Martin acoustics seem to be so prevalent among country artists, right? That big dreadnought, right? That was the guitar that just... It seemed like every country artist had to have one and played one, whether it was a D18, like you say, or a D28, or were those around then, or was that a later model?
Like Bill Monroe, he had to have a D28 in his band, so he bought one.
Exactly.
And whoever was his guitar player, he made him play that one.
Exactly.
And by all accounts, it was a really amazing sounding one too.
That's cool.
So that, I mean, all those Bill Monroe records, it's probably mostly the same guitar. Yeah. So the D28 was huge in bluegrass, and I think in general country too. That's the guitar between the D18 and the D28. That's the one that's got more instant gratification, and more, you know, more bass and more, you know, just like
they just sounded incredible.
So everybody gravitated towards those back then, and I'm sure in a lot of those backwoods little towns and hollers, there was you know, like. Martin guitar was the same thing. You know, it's like Scotch tape. It's like, I'm going to get a Martin guitar.
Exactly.
You know, it's like
Scotch
I'm going to get a guitar.
Exactly.
So,
exactly. I think it came like Xerox or something. It's like that's just the guitar, right? You just, if you're going to get a guitar, it's a Martin.
Everything's a toy that you play with until you get a Martin.
Exactly.
So I'm sure it was that for a lot of those folks. But I agree. You know, I was just taking note of all the different Martins.
It was Martin. Some Gibson, some Fenders, but the Martins played prominently. I was going to say, now that you said that, Bill Monroe's mandolin was iconic, and it's so cool to see. The thing I dig too about like musicians and their reverence for instruments is like how much they dig these artists and what they did and their instruments. Like that's a sacred thing, is that mandolin or a guitar. It's like to artists who grew up idolizing these people, and it's true of any genre probably, but in this genre particularly, I think there's such more of a connection, maybe a familial connection, or you know what I mean, or a community in this country genre, you know, and so instruments and things like that become so iconic and so treasured, and like, oh, that's Bill Monroe's,
right?
You know, that's his mandolin that he played, you know, countless gigs on.
I agree. I think there's a lot of that. I think it's throughout, you know, music as a whole thing, but I think it is more. I mean, the way that the reverence of which they talked about the artists and the instruments in there. That's one thing I'll say about the series is just like the interviews are fantastic.
Oh man!
I mean, you just so many. I mean, it's so great to like know that Merle Haggard is fucking as cool as he is.
I know.
You know, you love his music, and fucking Dwight Yoakam. You just want to hug him sometimes. He's like just fucking. Everybody was really great, and Marty Stewart had some of the best, like, you know, down-homey insight that, you know, of anything. And we're talking about that musical instrument reverence. He's the one that ended up with Clarence White's Telecaster. Yeah. So, you know, that's the whole thing. It becomes more than just a Telecaster. It's this thing. And Marty Stewart himself has said, you know, countless times he's out and about and he has that guitar and people come up to him and it's like, oh my God, that's Clarence White's guitar. And he says, I always let them play it because it's not really mine.
Exactly.
It belongs, you know, it's surpassed, you know, all, you know, kind of like basis for just being an instrument anymore. Yeah. It's Clarence White's Telecaster. It's responsible for defining a musical genre and just larger than life.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I definitely see that in the movie.
Cool.
I've heard a few disparaging comments about like things left out of the thing, and I get that. I totally, you know, I look at each and every one of them, and I'm like, oh, I could totally see that. So it's true, but it's my understanding that Ken Burns doesn't really know shit about country music. So if you take that into account, and you know, just how much it spanned, I think they did a really good job.
Yeah.
I mean, I would love to see more of certain things, this or that. You know, more Louvin Brothers I would have liked. You know, but. They touched upon it and they did a good job.
Yeah, so, and something as vast as this, you're not gonna make everybody happy.
No. You're
just not. But I think he did an amazing job at telling the story of the evolution of country music, and I'm the same way. I mean, I've never been a huge country fan. I came to it later in life, but I really appreciate it, and the more I understand about it and research it, it's just such an amazing community, really, of music and musicians and instruments. And so, yeah, I think he did a great job too. And again, it's just like for you and I who are guitar players, just seeing all this old footage of this old gear is just like, that was half the fun for me.
Oh yeah.
It's just going, shit, look at that gear. Look at that. Like you're saying, like those steel guitars or those tweed amps or those tellies or even just the funky guitars, like the Fender acoustics that they were using, like in the 60s and
late 60s and 70s, things got crazy. Like they started, you know, people started branching out and trying more things. Like Glenn Campbell was a huge, wacky guitar player. I mean, he played like, you know, weird Japanese electrics that just look like they're really fucking hard to play. Yeah. And here he is just ripping up on them.
Yeah. I thought that was cool too. I always loved that about Glenn Campbell. He played these funky guitars, but he made them sound amazing. Yeah.
Oh, and there's let's not forget Trigger, Willie Nelson's.
Oh man, totally. That's an iconic guitar. Totally. I mean, that's a Martin nylon string guitar that is all over the place.
And that was amazing. You know, Willie Nelson's insight was great. I've always loved Willie Nelson, but listen to him talk, you just, things you take for granted, like the song Crazy, you're like, that's a great song. It's a classic timeless song, but you hear him talk about it and how it came to be, and it's like, and you know, just to hear him say that I knew it was a good song. Yeah. It's like, yeah, fuck yeah.
Exactly.
But it's just like, it's amazing, and people's perception, like, you know, people like, and I can totally see this from the time, you know, here you got Willie Nelson, he comes in and he's singing, and he's got this like nasally voice, and everybody's going, I don't know about his voice, but you listen to it, and it's just like a pre-war Martin. It just has this character and this like musicality to it that nobody else in the fucking world has. And just to think that there was a time when someone's going, I don't know, man, this guy can't sing.
Exactly.
It's just so funny to see in retrospect.
Well, and not only that, it's like, you know, regardless of a person's voice or anything else, I think even me, like if I hear a song, I can tell that's a good song. That's a well-written song. Like if some Joe Schmo came up and played me a song and I go, wow, there's something there. You know what I mean? I can see potential there. But exactly, just to say, he's got a nasally voice, take it somewhere else. and again, I loved the validation that he and Waylon Jennings and his kind got when they said, hey, there's something going on down here in Texas. You ought to come on down. And they fucking blew it up. You know, it's like, they didn't fit into Nashville, and Nashville was on a trend, the whole Nashville sound and all that stuff.
Thanks, Chet Atkins.
Thanks, Chet. But yeah, I thought that was so cool. And I'm the same way. I love Willie Nelson. I love Waylon Jennings. I love that whole outlaw thing. And again, guitars play prominently in that thing, man. Waylon had that cool telly wrapped in leather.
Phase shifter. He was like, he brought the phase shifter to country music. I don't know if he single-handedly did that, but for a while, the late 70s, like country music had phase shifter on it. And just around the time that rock music got away from the phase shifter and headed headlong towards the chorus pedal, they're like, we'll take this phase here, we'll use it. So there's a lot of cool country music with the phase shifters on it. Yeah.
But guitar-wise, and again, Charlie Pride is playing a Coronado of all things, and it's like, that is so cool, because those are notorious for being hard to play and kind of bolt on neck or semi. But I just dug seeing all those instruments, and again, like you were saying, because the nudie suits were hot. Everybody wanted this cool blingy country suit, and that translated to their guitars too, right? I had to have my name on my damn fretboard. That was a big thing, or like you're saying, they pushed, how guitar makers were going to bling out their guitars, like the J45. It's like, that thing's insane. Yeah. All the inlays and it's beautiful, but
No, it's cool. They were definitely. There was a lot of the early guitar inventors, manufacturers were huge country music fans. Yeah. So there was a lot of direct contact. So with a lot of those country stars had input on how those the Stratocaster and the Telecaster came together, because he was constantly listening to those guys. What do you need? What do you want?
Yeah. Well, even the Dreadnought, because the bigger body of that acoustic guitar was meant to mitigate the smaller bodies that wouldn't project as much in a band situation, right? So they made the body bigger and sure enough, those Dreadnought guitars became the de facto guitar shape because they projected more and they sounded better.
The banjo killer.
The banjo. Yeah. There you go.
Get over the banjo.
Yeah.
No, it was super cool. I almost want to watch it again.
I know.
But I think I'm going to let more time pass. Imagine that series, if taking something like that series and focusing on guitars.
Oh, yeah.
You could do that, and that would be super cool, too.
Yeah.
And guitar players more, because that was, some people were, a little bit bummed out that some guitar players didn't get as much representation as they thought they should, and I agree.
Yeah.
But I could see that how it wasn't done in the time constraints. Like James Burton, who was instrumental, pun intended, in modern guitar playing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's the one that took the first person that we know of that took the G string off and put a banjo string on there so he could bend strings.
That's cool.
He came up with all that. He was the basis for all that, bendy, stringy country, twangy, chicken picking stuff. Yeah. And he had a mention, but it was very brief and didn't really talk about him in the context of, changing the course of guitar music.
Yeah.
But so, something that focused deeply on that would be super cool to see. I
would really dig that. The cool thing about it is they feature so many guitars in the pictures and the video and the old footage that you can track kind of the lineage of how guitars evolved over time, right? Maybell's old L5 and how, Gibson was evolving as a guitar manufacturer, and Martin was evolving as a guitar manufacturer, truss rods, all this pre-war Martins versus post-war Martins and all this other stuff. And I just thought it was so cool to see that. Like you say, they didn't focus on it because it wasn't a guitar documentary, but those instruments, all those instruments obviously are integral to the story, right? Because without the instruments, there's no music. But I just thought it was cool to see the evolution of those instruments, over time.
And you mentioned the pre-war, post-war Martin thing, which is really interesting when you watch this, is because today, as guitar players, we have access to all this shit and this whole these reissued programs by all these companies, and we're all focused on the pre-war Martins. We're we got to have that. We got to have the scallop bracing, the forward shifted scallop bracing, and all this other shit. We got to have, because that's what the old pre-war ones were. Probably 99.9% of all the country music that you listen to was made with post-war. a lot of that shit, a lot of the classic like Martin sounds that you associate from records with the Martin sound is a definitely post-war Martins.
Yeah.
We can focus about that stuff, but every once in a while you got to say, why are we focused about this? Do we just is it the sound that we're looking for? Because I want to get that sound that the great records, or is it specs that we're focused on? Right. I got to have those specs because those are the really old ones that go for, $200,000, have those specifications. So that's what I want. I mean, I'm more I lean more towards, I want a Martin guitar that sounds like a Martin guitar does on my favorite records from the 60s and 70s and, and earlier. So
yeah.
That was one thing I thought about when watching that. I was like, it was great for me to see it when I did, because I was just coming out of, or actually still in, my glued to my acoustic guitar phase. So I was playing a lot of acoustic guitar, and just seeing all those just kind of, it hit me just right, because my headspace was there at the time. And that's something I thought about too. It's like, because, going on forums and, Martin forums and whatnot, and someone's like, why would you, that's a straight brace, get the new one. It's, people just obsessing about these things. But if you kind of lay them out like rationally, it's like, sure, a guitar with that specs is going to do this. This is what it's going to do. It's going to vibrate more. It's going to give you more of this. But is that what you're looking for? Or are you looking for the sound? You know what I mean? And then it just comes down to, you like that sound better. I'm rambling right now, but
I like it.
I think the coffee just kicked in. But basically, I'm saying in a nutshell, it was really fascinating from a guitar player's standpoint.
It was. And again, I was just starting to flash on the cool, not only the evolution of guitar, but evolution of instruments as they played an important role in the genre, right? Like banjo was the instrument for so long, right?
Yeah.
And it still was, but it changed its focus a little bit when the guitar came in and everybody was playing guitar more, and guitar over piano, right? Piano was a cool instrument, but guitar, you could take it with you wherever you went. It was portable, and it was much more easy to use in a situation where you're mobile and you could go places and stuff. So I thought that was cool too, to focus on in terms of just the evolution of musical instruments and which one was the focus at a time, and then the banjo kind of took a little back seat to the guitar. And
that's really interesting. When the banjo took a back seat to the guitar, the banjo was kind of responsible for the Dreadnought. Because it was like a banjo player that came to Martin and said, banjo is falling out of favor. I got to learn guitar, but I want one that's more scaled like a banjo, and I want these specs. And so then they put it together. I think it wasn't even through Martin, it was through Ditson, a company that they were working with. And so the things that they did that they rolled in from the banjo into this guitar came from the banjo.
That's cool.
Dreadnought. Unless I'm remembering wrong, I think that I'm pretty sure that's what it was. It was some banjo dude. I don't know his name, but I just thought of that when you were saying that the banjo was kind of shifting back a little bit and the guitar was coming forward. I think there was a correlation between that shift and the modern Dreadnought.
Yeah.
Look it up.
Well, I think you're right, because the whole thing was also that older guitars had smaller bodies, and the body shape wasn't conducive to projecting as much as the Dreadnought does to compete with other instruments in a band, right, in an ensemble. And so they, along, like you're saying, I want more volume, and I want it to, I want to be able to have my guitar heard in the context of a band. And so, but also getting back to bling too, Jimmy Rogers' guitar was cool, man.
Oh yeah,
that was a cool Martin, and it was a smaller body Martin, and he had that thing blinged out. And it's so fun. It's so cool to see, like, when people got some money going, they upgraded their guitars, right? It's like he was probably playing an old, average model, and then it's like, screw this, I'm gonna have my name on the fretboard, I'm gonna have the bling on it and the inlays and all that stuff.
When did the Sears and all those catalog companies were making like cheaper guitars? They were doing that a long time ago. Yeah. So I don't know which would have been. I don't know when Silvertone brand name came into. Right. That's what a lot of these people were playing before they stepped up to a Martin guitar. Yeah, and they got a real guitar.
And that was cool to see. How guitarists that were probably playing a not inferior, well, inferior to some degree, inferior instruments. Once they got some dough, they started to, upgrade their gear, like Maybell and Jimmy Rogers and all those artists that were playing funky old guitars. I could totally relate. It's like, I want a better guitar.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But, it's interesting, if you parallel this movie with, a documentary on the blues music, it's like those players just stuck with the cheap shit. It's like, fuck it, I don't have time to worry about a guitar. I just want to make music.
Right.
So you'll see a lot of silver tones and
that's a good point.
Cheaper guitars for used in that music, and it works great.
Yeah.
That's one thing that those people taught us, is that shitty guitars from back then, things that we would think were shitty guitars, actually they have a sound.
Yeah.
And they have a vibe, and they're capable of creating a whole, like, different tones aside from the top echelon guitars that everybody wants. So yeah, I mean, now we're so spoiled that we can do that. We can collect both.
Yeah.
I want a Martin D45, but I also want a silver tone, 2 lipstick pickup. It's just, back then it was like you just got what you could get and you used it, or you used what you could until you could get a Martin guitar or a Gibson guitar or whatever. I think, anyway.
That's a good point. And and some people probably just that was my guitar, man. This is what I play. Why would I? You know what I mean? We talked about that before too. It's like to some people, this is just a tool.
Right.
I don't need bling or anything else. This is just a tool in the tool chest, and this is what I play. I'm not gonna. Why would I upgrade this? There's no upgrading. It's like, this is what I play.
But if you're a cowboy singing guitar player, you need one that stands out and looks good on a horse.
Rhinestones, inlays.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No. For anybody out there listening who hasn't seen it and even has a passing interest in the history of music, it's definitely worth checking out.
Oh yeah.
How many episodes were there?
Oh my gosh,
13 or something.
Yeah.
Shit.
But it's so engrossing. I mean, and the episodes are long.
Yeah.
So we'd started on a weeknight, and we're like, we'd think it's going to come to an end. It's 9:00, and it's like there's another 20 minutes left, and we're like, damn. I mean, it was cool because we were engrossed, but it was like, we got to go to bed. But another kind of off-topic guitar, but I love the nudie suits. I just freaking I loved the blingy suits that all these country people started to wear.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And it spilled over into country rock and everything else. And it was just so cool to see that, because, and you know what? I started to really appreciate that aspect of show business a little bit more when I saw all these people just like, this is what it's about. It's like, people want to come see, they want to be entertained. You know what I mean? It's not just some schmucks getting up there. I mean, it can be, but I appreciated more of the show that they were trying to put on, rather than just get up there and play music for people. Because people are paying good money to come see you at the Ryman, and they've had a hard day in the coal mines, and they want to see some blingy dude up there crooning these songs. Totally. I kind of dug that.
I dug that too.
And that Ryman Auditorium just is amazing. Like I was just blown away by the whole thing. But that, and and the fact that in the summertime that thing got just unbearable to be in and stuff. I was fascinated by that this auditorium was the grail of country music, but it just became untenable because it was just such a hellhole for the artists and the patrons of the thing. But
no, that's right. And like, for many people of our generation, our whole window into so much of it was hee-haw.
Oh yeah, totally.
That's like, as a kid, right. I consciously only became aware of country music through hee-haw. And Saturday nights, I think it was, it would be on. I'm like, oh, what are these hillbillies? and then from there, I mean, that's like steeped in the Ryman and all that whole culture and the huge country thing. It's just fascinating.
Yeah, and it's cool that you mentioned that, because that was kind of my entree into this genre too. But as a kid, I played guitar, and I loved Roy Clark and Buck Owens and all those guitar players on that show, because they'd be playing guitar and doing their own badass picking, and I'm like, damn, that's cool. And they've got cool gear. Like, I loved Buck Owens because he always had those red, white, and blue. He had the red, white, and blue Gretsch acoustic, and he had a telly like that and stuff. So, yeah, again, for a young guitar player, hee-haw was awesome, because it that genre wasn't on my radar totally, but that drew me in. Those guitar players drew me into that genre.
It drew me in for the instruments, but at the same time it repelled me, because especially when I started listening to rock and roll, I'm like, this music, this is country bullshit, But I would watch it just to see the guitars and to see the guitar players, because I could appreciate that, even though, I wasn't there. I loved, going back to like classic, American guitars, and primarily Martins, is the singer-songwriter portion of the series, where you talk about like Chris Christopherson and Townes Van Zandt and all those, the troubadour style guitars, which, again, Martins usually. I mean, possibly a Gibson.
Yeah.
That was really fascinating to see, and because a lot of those, troubadours, their guitar, they were like a one guitar guy. They would drag it around the fucking country with them, and just get all beat up, and just to see and these are the inspiration for which all these like phenomenal songs came from.
Oh yeah,
that was really cool to see. Chris Christopherson's story is just fascinating. Johnny Cash. I mean, his style of guitar playing, but he is like one of the most amazing human beings who ever lived. And if you needed reminding of that, this series will do that. I mean, I guess I always knew, but just to see it laid out in front of you in a series like this, it's like, that man was like from outer space. He was ahead of his time, and there will never be another Johnny Cash.
I totally agree, and I had the same vibe when I was watching it too. It's like, this is all kind of stuff you knew, because we grew up watching Johnny Cash and his show and all this other stuff.
He was on Columbo?
Yeah, he was on Columbo. He was. Well, he was all over the place, right? Because he was one of those people that truly transcended his genre in every way possible.
His entire life.
Yeah, he was crossover in every way, right? Mm-hmm. That's what I loved about his show. He had Bob Dylan on his show, Eric Clapton, country artists, you name it. And he's like, screw it. This is, and I loved the part too where he was going to play a Chris Christopherson song. Sunday Morning Coming Down.
Right.
And Chris Christopherson was in the audience, and the network is going, no, you can't say this word. And he's like, fuck it, I'm going to do it. The songwriter's going to be in the audience. I have to do this. Right. Fuck you guys. And he did it.
Not only going to do it, I'm going to lean into it.
Exactly. That's integrity, And again, time and time again, it just showed us what an amazing dude that was. And I loved watching him play guitar, because I do this a lot too. Like, he played his guitar, and when he was strumming it, he'd always strum it over the fretboard for some reason. I don't know why, but I do that a lot too. I don't know why, but I picked up on that, and I dug that about his guitar playing. And he played all kinds of crazy guitars.
Right.
He played Fenders acoustics sometimes, Martins, some Gibsons, So,
we should talk about. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's
it just popped into my head. Another huge guitar in the country movement was the J200.
Oh yeah,
that was one you could really bling out, and there was a lot of. I'm trying to think of any.
Emmylou Harris.
Has
I love the fact that she loves those jumbo guitars, man, because they were huge guitars, but they sound amazing.
They really do, and that was forever was the guitar that I wanted.
Yeah, me too.
For all throughout the 90s, it's one day I'm going to get a J200. I never had a tattoo, but if I ever did get a tattoo, it was either going to be a J200 or a Telecaster, and I never got either one.
That's awesome.
But I ended up getting a Martin, but I love them.
I associate the J200 with Emmylou Harris, because every time I see her pictures or anything, she's playing a cool J200. Yeah. So I think that's cool that you mentioned that too, because that's one of the guitars I was always drawn to too, because they're kind of blingy but not too blingy.
Top of the line, look country, and they're big.
Oh yeah,
and
but they sound amazing. You strum those things and it sounds like a piano.
Got to have one of those too. I guess I ended up with a Martin D18, but there's no reason not to have a J200 and a Hummingbird.
I mean, come on,
and a D28, and so
there's no rules against it, Chris.
No, there's not. And this show, more than anything else, showed me that I need to get out there and get some guitars.
You're damn right. Yeah, they're like golf clubs, right? Isn't that what you say? Yeah. You need a putter, a driver, a chipper, and whatever. Wedge, whatever. But no, I'm glad you mentioned that J200, because, that guitar stood out to me. When I was a kid, I saw those things, and I'm like, God, that's such a cool... Before I even heard one, I probably heard them on recording, but I didn't make the association. But you see them, and they're just beautiful guitars, man. And I knew Emmylou Harris played those, and I'm like, oh, she's cool. She's got a great voice. She's amazing. But
I think Keith Richards is playing one in some of the famous photos of him and what's his face, Graham Parsons.
Oh yeah,
I think he has a big blonde one.
That was another cool thing that they touched on about Graham Parsons too, and his love for country music, and he got Emmylou Harris into country music by making her really focus on these artists he was really into, like George Jones and all these.
She's another one that's up there with Johnny Cash, who's just like her. We are all indebted to her for her service in country music.
Totally,
just unwavering her entire career, just otherworldly person.
Oh yeah,
this was chock full of those types of people, though. Really.
Yeah, it was, and it's neat to see that and kind of.
Loretta Lynn, hello.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, another fucking.
I love it. And
classic.
she had a cool guitar with her name on the fretboard, which is awesome.
That's right. I forgot about that.
Oh, yeah.
What was that? Was some sort of Gibson?
I think it was a Gibson, actually.
Like a J180 or something?
Yeah, I think so. But I think it was. I don't think it was a Martin. I think it was a Gibson. But that just sticks with me. I love it that they all had to have their name on their freaking fretboard. I mean, and I wanted that for like when I was a kid. It's like, God, someday I want to have my.
I always wanted to have your name on my guitar too.
Well, everybody does, but I just thought that was so cool. You know, it's like that's a pretty custom thing to have your name on your fretboard. And
right, and her story is not. I mean. Not to give too much away, but like her fascinating story, the way she busted into the scene.
It's insane.
But you listen to her songs, and it's like, in the context of history, it's like, how could she not? These are fucking amazing. They're just like, these songs were just waiting to be written until she came along to enter country music and make country music what it is.
Well, and the cool thing is they all came from just reality, man. This is my life. All of these songs, it's folk music, and that's what it is. They're writing about their lives, and I think that's what's so alluring and appealing about this music is it's just like it comes from they're just writing about their lives, it's
and that's true. I mean, that's kind of like probably in the movie hints at that's kind of where it started too, with folk music and country music. But now, like, the basis for any music I like has that element to it. I mean, I think like the first Replacements record, Sorry Ma Forgot to Take Out the Trash, is like a perfect folk rock album or a folk album. It's just singing about fucking going to the store and waiting for the bus and how I hate my school, and that owes its roots to the same kind of stuff. I was like, I'm gonna sing. You don't want to hear me sing about like you don't want to hear me sing about like fucking castles and dragons.
Well, that's for Rush, which we love.
To do that, but I'm gonna just sing about like being bored Midwest person.
Exactly.
And it contains all those things that I like about country music, and it's any music for me is like that. I mean, it's just that element. Whether even instrumental music, you can hear the truth in the music. It's like this is I'm just playing what I've been influenced by, and you're going to be able to tell because of the way it comes out.
I love it.
And that was kind of instilled in stories like Loretta Lynn's story, which I thought was fantastic.
Yeah, and I think that's such a cool correlation too. I'm the same way. I love authenticity. That's what I'm drawn to, and so like I'm the same way. Like I love whether it's contemporary music or old music, as long as it's got some truth in it. That's like. You pick up on. It's not overt sometimes, but it's like, oh yeah, this sounds fucking gritty. It's the truth. It's like I can latch on to that.
3 chords and the truth.
Yeah, totally. Well, other than guitars too, I dug all the old mandolins that were being played. They're just beautiful instruments, and just like I said, like Bill Monroe's mandolin. I think Marty Stewart talked about that. Ricky Skaggs talked about that.
And Marty Stewart did too, because he played with him. He played mandolin with him.
Yes.
And Marty's stories are great in this.
Oh my God. I love him, man. And I love his band, and his band is amazing. And he's amazing. And I love, like you were talking about, like he's basically the custodian for this guitar. He knows that, but he plays it. I love it that he plays the guitar,
Goes out on tour, he plays it. They just did the Birds thing, and he had it right up there, Clarence is looking down and smiling.
I think
he did a great job with those Clarence licks on that thing. Man.
He's a badass guitar player. Yeah. I mean, but anyway,
hate him.
But he's been playing since he was a fucking little kid. Like it is. I thought again. Off the topic, but I thought it was hilarious when he met Connie Smith, right? And said, I want to marry her or something. He was like a little kid, and Connie Smith was a grown woman, and he married her eventually. I don't know if that's creepy or kind of weird, but anyway, it was kind of interesting.
It's an interesting story.
But like we'd say, you got to watch this documentary if you're a guitar player or a lover of instruments,
or music or history.
But we decided to kind of cover it from guitars. We kind of delved into other things, but always come back to guitars. But for us, man, it was just so cool to see all these instruments throughout the years and kind of the evolution of them, and just the beauty of their sound and just the aesthetic beauty of them is what I can't get enough of it. You know what I mean?
And it's interesting that we haven't been able to top that today.
No.
I mean, that's where they got it right off the bat.
Yeah.
And you might see a little variation on something, but everybody, when they roll out in 2020 to bring a guitar off the assembly line, it's going to be closer to that than anything that's come since, because it's what we want. It's what sounds good, and they got it right.
Yeah, I agree. Well, awesome. Check us out on all the social media stuff, Spotify,
the things we're on,
iTunes, all the digital things we're on in this newfangled world. What do you got to say, Chris?
No, nothing. Just like, I hope that played out right. I really dug the series.
I think it did. I did too.
I like talking about it.
Yeah.
And hopefully I stuck to guitars enough and not ramble.
And chime in, man. We'd love to hear your take on this documentary and guitars and all that other jazz too. And whoever's out there listening, thank you.
Thanks a lot.
All right. Till next time. Bye.
Goodbye.